How do you sort out the so-called jargon from real-world practices that work? Do the members of your organization find some business or technology advice utterly confusing? Welcome to Real Talk with Sam Holcman. In this program, we set the record straight, and in terms that business people and technology people can understand. Now, here is your host, Sam Holcman.
Welcome to this edition of Real Talk. A little bit different issue of Real Talk in this particular broadcast. It's actually directed, if I can, to one individual, and that is the chairman and CEO of Microsoft. Let me say this right up front. Massive respect for this gentleman. It's astounding what he has done and also what Microsoft has done for 50 plus years. Really kind of amazing. And yes, Microsoft has had some missteps, and that's what this is about. It's about one of those missteps. And this has to do with an article that I was reading entitled 9 Microsoft Missteps You May Have Forgotten. And in the gazillions of home runs, using a baseball analogy for just a moment, that we all are benefiting from, there was one that I think needs to be looked at again. And that is the Windows Phone. And if any of you had the Windows Phone, it ran for about 10 years, 2010 to 2020. I had one of those phones. I loved that phone. I loved it because I said, Microsoft has figured this out. Instead of having multiple interfaces, let's have one on the personal computer, one on the tablet, and one on the phone. Man, did that make sense to me. It made an incredible amount of sense. You can go from one device to the other. If I can use the phrase, it was basically screen size, if I can be this bold as far as simplification, that made the difference. It was transparent. I loved it. Now, it didn't work. Now, here's a quote in this article. I shouldn't say a quote, a statement. I assume it's a quote from Microsoft's CEO. He still considers giving up on this phone as one of his biggest mistakes. Well, let's take a look at this and say it was possibly a mistake in 2020. That doesn't mean that you can't look at it again. Now, we know that during that particular time, the iPhone was the thing that dominated people's interest, and relatively quickly after that, or during that same period of time, it was the Android operating system. That was part of this revolution in pocket devices, and of course, Microsoft was one of those. And part of the possible problem was the interconnection, if I can use that phrase, between the software that Microsoft was producing and the vendor of the actual hardware. And at that time, it was Nokia. And if you remember back, there was such a momentum that Microsoft actually bought the entire mobile division of Nokia and named it, Microsoft Mobile, if any of you remember that particular time. And unfortunately, it didn't matter. Interest was less and less. Application developers were really the ones that caused its demise, in my opinion. I'm not blaming them, but there was no market for the Microsoft version of this stuff. And possibly this is something that Microsoft can look at now. Instead of looking at outside developers only, they have a wealth of products that are used by an incredible number of people on the PCs and on the Surface computer. Go the other way. Port those to a new phone with the Windows operating system. Build up that base of interest. Call me. I'll buy one of these. And I may have two devices in my pocket for a while. I understand that's silly. But it makes so much sense, in closing, to have one interface between myself, a human being, and a device, no matter what the screen size is. Whether the screen's on my desk, whether the screen's in my hands, if I can use the phrase, with a tablet, or the screen is in the palm of my hand and in my pocket. Maybe somebody will pay attention. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for tuning into Real Talk. Be sure to join your host, Sam Holcman, again for another edition of our program. We'll have more real topics of discussion then.